If your space feels too small, cluttered, or temporary, Brana and I are here to help. Hi, I'm Beth Ann, and I'm going to share some of my favorite sewing and quilting organization and storage tricks, including tips for how you can adapt these ideas to your own space. There will even be views of my workspace I've never shared before. My current studio is set up in one side of our dining room, and everything needs to be easily movable so that we can eventually switch it back. Therefore, nothing is permanently attached to the walls other than the one quilt hanging rod that also holds my portable design wall in place. I'll give you a closer look when we get to that point. But before we talk about shelves or bins or drawers, here's my core idea. A thoughtful setup makes everything easier. And when everything is easier, you get to the fun stuff faster. But always keep in mind that the goal isn't matching my setup, it's building one that supports you. Let's pause here for a quick reality check. Depending on what your life is like, you may not have a dedicated studio space. When my husband was in grad school, our bedroom had a sewing machine set up in the corner. Or my sewing room happened to have a bed in it, depending on how you looked at it. So I hope you'll take whatever tips are helpful to you in the situation you're in now. Let's start with easy access to your most used tools. Can you quickly grab whatever you need when you're working? A dollar store Lazy Susan can really come in handy. This IKEA organizer has a bigger footprint, but I love that it keeps everything, even my clips and small rulers, within arm's reach. Most of my other rulers and tools that I don't use as often are over on the other side of the room. But if we turn back to the sewing machine and pull the camera back a bit, you can see that I have some additional tabletop baskets to help corral some of my tools and notions. And if you look behind my sewing chair, which is just barely visible behind my sewing machine, you'll find that I have cabinets or chests of drawers on either side. This type of unit, and there's actually two stacked on top of each other here, is nice and wide with fairly shallow drawers. Since it's positioned on my right-hand side, and I'm right-handed, this keeps small tools and notions within easy reach. I don't even have to get out of my chair to pull open these drawers. You'll notice that I like to use flatware trays to help keep my drawers organized. Otherwise, everything just gets jumbled together. I keep items I use most often, like cotton thread and bobbins, in drawers I can reach while seated at my sewing machine, while other items I don't use as often, like these baskets of adhesives and specialty tools, can go higher. On my other side, I can roll over to my cabinet, and this is again actually two units, one stacked on top of the other. One of the things I love about this style is that while some of the drawers are shallow, other drawers are deeper. I also use flatware trays in some of the deeper drawers to sort and store specialty rulers and templates that could otherwise be awkward to store. I've stacked Dollar Tree trays in the nice deep drawers, no wasted space, and we'll talk more about thread in just a bit. But first, let's look at fabric. Fabric is often where the overwhelm starts, but it can also be one of the easiest things to address. Now, if I can't see my fabric or easily reach it, I probably won't use it. And I swear that sometimes it multiplies behind my back. Just the effort of digging through bins can suck up all of my available creative energy, and I'm worn out before I've even started. That's why one of my favorite and most effective changes was in how I store my fabric. Here I'm folding it the same way I would for rotary cutting, salvage to salvage, and then once more, making sure that there's no pulling or rippling along the folds. Now that it's folded, I'm going to grab an acid-free comic book board, which is basically acid-free cardstock, and a couple of plastic clips. I avoid metal pins or metal paper clips as they can rust over time. I'll drop links for some of the items I'm mentioning in the description. Now I'm ready to wrap. As you can see, I keep it really quick and simple, and you can fold it with the selvages on the inside if you prefer. Now that it's wrapped, here comes the clips. First one side, let me get it in there, then I'll swing it around, and then the other. There we go. Easy peasy, all set. Once it's wrapped this way, it becomes incredibly easy to sort and group by color, by vibe, or by project. And when I can see my fabric clearly, I get excited to use it. Now, I have to keep my fabric in a separate space, which is not ideal, but I do make it work. And I'm really happy with how accessible my yardage and fat quarters are in my shelving. One thing we should note, though, is that there's no direct sunlight in the room where my fabric is stored. If there was, I'd want the fabric to be better protected. The bottom line for me is that it's easier to combine fabrics thoughtfully when they're visible and grouped intentionally. Whether it's yardage, precuts, or scraps, the goal is the same: make it visible and easy to reach. A quick word about storing bolts. I found a laundry bin at Ikea that is just perfect for full-size fabric bolts. Now, I almost never buy an entire bolt of fabric, but I do like to wrap large cuts of fabric for borders or backings, say more than 4 yards, on recycled bolts to keep the fabrics as neat and wrinkle-free as possible until I'm ready to use them. And I love that this unit has a top flap so I can cover the contents of the bin completely. And our kitties love it as a perch from which to supervise my sewing and quilting. Let's take a minute to talk about precuts because they can easily fall into the trap of I can't see it, so I won't use it, which is why I love these clear storage options, which were originally meant for use in the kitchen. I also have a selection of baskets that are perfect for organizing and storing yardage in drawers that I can close, and other baskets and organizers that are perfect for precuts like 10-inch layer cakes, 5-inch charm squares, fat quarters, and 2.5-inch wide jelly rolls. These options are especially helpful in high traffic areas like my main temporary studio, as they protect the fabric from light and dust, but still make it easy for me to find what I need. Let's move on. Thread might seem like a small thing, but when it's tangled, dusty, or hard to find, it slows you down more than you think. It's also important to protect thread from light, dust, and humidity, just like fabric. Now, you may not need these next two notions, but not all thread brands have mechanisms to secure the thread ends, so I'm including these options. Spool savers like this work on chubby spools and skinny spools, and I'm trying to get this thread wrapped around so I can attach it. There we go. And everything in between. They work on full-size spools. Here we are. And even on cones like this. Works just great. I'm also using a product called Hugo's Amazing Tape. It's not sticky like regular tape. It just clings to itself, not to anything else. I've cut a piece long enough to go around with some overlap, and I'm sorry I drifted a bit off screen for some of this. And there we go. I've just about got it. And this too can work on any type of thread or size of spool. Check out how much better our original thread box looks already. So much more inviting and ready to use. And don't forget bobbins. I prefer boxes that prevent the loose bobbins from rattling around. I also find bobbin rings or donuts particularly handy because they store the bobbins securely while keeping them easy to see and identify. These flatware trays are a perfect fit in my wide cabinet with shallow drawers. They keep my threads from rolling around and keep them easy to sort by color and type. And this is how I stack Dollar Tree trays in my narrow cabinet with deeper drawers. It's a great way to maximize space while keeping everything easy to find. My space isn't permanent, and that has shaped a lot of my decisions. For one thing, all of my IKEA cabinets and shelving units are mounted on casters so that we can easily move them around as needed. And I'm a big fan of rolling storage too. I like to use the taller cart as a mobile pressing station with a pressing pad, I'll show you in a minute, or as a parking space for my organizer when I need to cut larger pieces of fabric on my work table. The smaller cart functions in a similar way, but has the added advantage of being just short enough to slide underneath my table and out of the way when I'm not using it. And the larger cart is perfect for these lidded plastic boxes too. Now, please don't worry if you don't live near an IKEA. There's lots of comparable options out there for all of these products, although you'll want to pay close attention to quality. Remember that I said the smaller carts can tuck under my table? Well, it's long enough that it can be tricky to get the whole table in one shot, but my wonderful work table is actually our once and future dining room table. I have it covered with an extra long cutting mat to protect it, but since those huge mats are pricey to replace, I usually cut with one of my 24-inch by 36-inch mats placed on top. They're not exactly cheap either, but they're still a lot more economical to switch out. And no sewing or quilting space would be complete without pressing surfaces. In case you're interested, I'll link the playlist that includes my videos covering how to make these pressing boards like this, which fit nicely next to my machine or on top of a rolling cart, and the big board version that I use for pressing yardage and assembling quilt tops. This is also the board that I use to create an L shape next to my machine when I'm machine quilting or binding a large quilt. The extra support makes the quilt so much easier to manage. Here's another view you haven't seen before, where my big board lives when I'm not using it on my main work table. And last but not least, my homemade design wall. It's a full 96 by 96 inches made from insulation boards. In this shot, you can see that I'm displaying one of my Easy Pieces quilts. I use a hook and molding system to hold the covered insulation board in place, so it's super easy to lift the molding strip off the hook to remove or change out the quilt. And a hook is the only bit that's actually attached to the wall. Here I've taken down the finished quilt so I can use the design wall to lay out a new quilt, under strict supervision from Ronan. If you're curious about how I made my design wall, that tutorial will be included in the playlist too. But even more important than how it's built is what it allows you to do. Being able to see your layout at a distance is a game changer. Plus, it cuts down on situations like this happening. A happy quilting space doesn't have to be big, expensive, or even permanent. It just needs to make it easier for you to create and easier to sit down and start. What's your favorite organizational or storage tip? Let me know in the comments. Whatever your space looks like, the kiddies and I hope you found some of these ideas helpful. Consider joining my weekly email list if you'd like to stay in touch, and please don't forget to subscribe for more practical quilting tips each week. Happy quilting!